Okay, so we are in the last month of the year. So as business owners, that means we are planning for next year. And if you are like any of the conversations that I've been having, there are shifts that need to happen, changes, there's growth. You want to change the way that you do things. You want to change how much you're working. You want to change who you're working with. You want change. You want better. You want different. You want to optimize. You want to become more profitable. These are all goals that we have as business owners. And this is such a wonderful time of year where there is so much joy-filled energy that we experience just from the holidays being around us. I understand it could also be a hard time for some people and totally understand that. But in the sense of us thinking about our businesses, solely our businesses and the growth of our businesses, this is where we are really buckling down and finalizing plans, stepping into planning or finalizing plans. And a couple of weeks ago, I booked an office for myself to have a VIP day with myself. And it's just such a reminder of like, this was on my to-do list for like a month before I did it. And even as somebody who is adamant about putting ourselves first, it's really hard to put yourself first in your own business. And it's really easy to get stuck in just doing everything that you need to do for the business and just doing what you've always done. And so I booked myself an office. I said, I'm going to step out of my business. I'm going to go into a new environment that's not my office, and I'm going to plan. And it was such a great experiment because I, of course, like did some pre-planning on like the topics I wanted to go over and like what I wanted to address and what I wanted to walk away with, just like I would in my VIP day with clients. And it was so enlightening. And it was such a great reminder of like how my clients feel after we do a VIP day, because it's like being able to have that time and space to where you aren't interrupted and to get to work on your business is like nothing else. And I feel like as moms, that time is so rare to where even as I'm recording this podcast, I have to finish recording this podcast and go pick up a kid from preschool. So it's just, the juggle that's very real to all of us. So I thought it would be fun today to give you guys a behind the scenes look at my VIP day planning, what I did, the topics that I looked at, the areas of the business that I looked at, questions I asked myself, all that kind of stuff, so that then you could take this and have a planning day for yourself, or you could get my planning template, or I could fly to you, you could fly to me, we could do a VIP day together. But this was just such a great experience. And I highly, highly recommend that you are spending more time than you are right now on the planning and creation and being out of your business to work on your business, because we get so stuck in the business. So thanks for joining me. Let's get into it. Behind the scenes, VIP day planning. Here's what it looked like for me. So the first thing that I did is I started with a recap of 2024. So when I did this, it was actually like mid-November. So of course, there's still a month and a half left, but I wanted to, before I set goals and before I have clients set goals, I always want to reflect first. And I think this is a big thing that a lot of people miss, because if we don't reflect, we don't pull out the valuable lessons of what we've been through. And we really don't know like what worked well and where to put our attention if we're not evaluating the efforts that we put in place. And so before getting into anything, I started with a 2024 recap. And so in a recap, you want to think about things like what went really well for you, like going through the successes that you had, whether they're big ones, they're small ones. And then you want to go through like what didn't work well, like what didn't feel good, what didn't go as planned. Why do you think that it didn't go well? And just identifying those things can tell you so much. Like one of the things that I discovered in this is like, I did so much better than I was giving myself credit for. And I think that that's something that we do a lot as business owners and as entrepreneurs, is because we're ambitious and we're always striving for the next thing. Like, we let that overshadow what we've already done. And so I was looking back and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, we increased revenue over 6 figures. We increased our profit the same amount. So we not only made more revenue, but we were more profitable, had two of our biggest months ever, had two of our most profitable, actually many of our most profitable months. And so we served more clients than ever. We got more referrals than ever. We got more renewals than ever. And so it was really, really enlightening to see. So you want to just take some time to look back. What worked? What didn't? And then look at like, where did the majority of your new business come from? Like, break it down so you can clearly see, okay, for the things that made you grow, what were those things, right? We get so focused on like trying to be in all the places all the time, or like too focused on social media marketing that we're like, oh, wow, like the majority of my business is actually coming from here. And so what things do I need to put in place to really optimize that channel? So where did the majority of your new business come from? How was your retention? How were your renewals? How were your referrals? Were you getting referrals? What goals did you set that you actually met? What goals did you set that you didn't meet? And why didn't you meet them, right? Was it due to more so like it wasn't aligned? Was it a lack of time? Was it that you didn't have clarity? Was it, sometimes it's just the execution of it. Our eyes and our heart and our minds are bigger than our calendars. That happens too. How many people did we serve this year? How does that compare to last year? And so these are all questions that you can go through and ask yourself to really look at the year prior. How did you feel supported? Where did you feel unsupported? This can help identify some gaps that you had, right? Because it would be one thing if it's like, okay, we had a great year financially, but I was really burnt out, right? Or we had, this is the thing. And like, even saying that is like, it makes me reflect on, I was able to increase revenue that much and not be burnout. And like, that is such a gift and such a privilege. And so it's just a testament of like, it doesn't have to always be. My workload did increase because I served more people. And there's a line of our capacity that we need to be aware of around that. But just making sure that we take this time to really look at like what worked and what didn't work. So hopefully those questions are helpful for you in the recap. The next thing that I moved into was goals. So knowing everything that I knew about the business and taking what actually didn't feel good and thinking about, okay, knowing that didn't feel good or that didn't work well, I actually used a lot of those things to set goals. And this is funny, but because most people in business do not do this, but the revenue and monetary goals are the thing that I won't say I care least about, because I love running a highly profitable business and I love having financial freedom. And that is something I'm grateful for every single day. With that though, I have never been somebody, even my CFO will be like, what do the financial goals look like? And I'm like, well, this kind of range would be cool. Like, it's something that I've never fully attached myself to. And the reason being is, in my experience of entrepreneurship, the income will always follow my intention and my impact. And so if I'm focusing on just impacting more people, creating community, creating networks for people, serving more people, obviously the income will follow that. And so that's something, I'm saying that because I don't want you to feel pressure to where it's like, okay, we had a $500,000 year, so next year we need to have $1 million year. you can, absolutely. I'm never going to detour anybody away from that. And in the same sense, if you're like, this year felt really good, the capacity felt great. So what goals can we set to maintain that? Right. And so the goals don't always have to be financially driven. You just want to keep your business financially healthy by ensuring there is healthy profit. So I went through all of, setting goals based upon like what I wanted and what I didn't want. And so I established what's called like a big North Star goal, right? So, and this is something you could use or not use, but it was really helpful to me because I like to plan with intention, right? And so if my big goal, my big vision is not clear, it doesn't make sense because then I'm just kind of willy-nilly versus like having everything attached to like, okay, this is aligned with that bigger goal. So I established like what my big North Star goal was. And then I broke that down into like individual goals that were attached with that. So you can set goals based upon your revenue. You can set goals based around like how many clients you want to acquire. You can set goals based around like your retention rates. You can set goals based on like your visibility. You can set goals for your team, for your operations. And then also thinking about like the time you spend working in your capacity, because a lot of people don't consider that, right? And so thinking about where you want to increase and where you want to decrease and setting goals around that. After I set goals, then I moved into my offer suite. And so I went through my offer suite, my pricing. I did a lot of math here. So for my non-math people, you will not love this section, but it's important to know your numbers. It's important to ensure that you are profitable. And it's important for you to be able to do cash flow forecasting. And so I took our cash flow forecasting, projected revenue, all of that kind of stuff, and went through and like all of our services, all of our offerings, took out what was no longer aligned, added things that made sense for the goals, and just like did a full audit of all the services. So you can do this for your services and your products by asking yourself things like which services or products generated the most revenue for you, which services and products felt like the most aligned that you enjoyed doing, that really play to your strengths, that are really a representative of your values. Are there any services that really drain you, that you don't enjoy, that you're like, every time I do this or every time I sell this, it feels like there's resistance or I don't like it, right? Like that's the freedom that we have as entrepreneurs. And that's why this is so fun. Like never lose sight that being an entrepreneur is a gift. And we get to completely like, I got to sit down and plan out like what I'm going to sell. And like, we all get to do that. That's so cool to me. I never lose sight of that. So looking at like all of your services, all of your offerings, evaluating those things, looking at your pricing. Do your prices actually reflect the value of your work and the market standards, right? So, and even outside of that, depending on your industry, I wouldn't get too caught up in market standards, but I do have an episode on how to raise your prices and ask for what you want if you want to listen to that and you know it's time to raise your prices. So looking at your pricing and then thinking about any sort of services you want to take away and then any sort of services you want to add. So what are some new services that you would like to introduce next year? One of the things that we are introducing that I'm really excited about because I love in-person stuff is we are introducing in-person, like small elevated, like workshops, luncheons, dinners, things like that. So very excited for that to come. And then we're also bringing back my voice and text only option for like very busy business owners that do not want another call in their calendar, but they know they still need support and guidance and direction. So we now have my Telegram only package, which is phenomenal because I get to be in your back pocket. So bringing those things back as well as some other things that will be a surprise. So looking at your offer suite, evaluating those things. And then what I did is I first looked at removal and reduction. And so this is like business wide, what are we going to stop doing and what are we going to do less of? And so this is really important to look at because a lot of times as entrepreneurs, we love to add stuff to our plate, but we forget that we have capacity that will between us and our team and our minds and our brains and our calendars that also needs to be considered. So if you know what efforts perform really well for you and which ones didn't, you can look at, okay, do we really need to be putting effort there, or do we shift and reallocate those resources towards channels and efforts that are producing a real ROI for us? So what sort of activities, operations, team time, services, or commitments are really like draining your time, your energy, or the resources without delivering the results that you want? You need to know what is helping you and what's not. And then your expenses, right? So are there any expenses that you could reduce without compromising quality or results? So like very small change, but I have been on Kajabi forever. I think like I got in Kajabi in 2019 and we are making a shift out of Kajabi. Not a huge impact in income because I'm on the $200 a month package, but I was able to get a yearly Black Friday thing for Flowdesk and then a lifetime membership for Thrivecart and then use Spotify Creators, which is actually free for the podcast. So these are just great tools, right? And it means that I don't have that $200 charge every month. And that allows me to reallocate that towards things that matter or that are producing a great result. So that's more team time, et cetera, or different tools. So, and then are there any like processes that feel super clunky or feel very complicated? So looking at like where there's bottlenecks and clogs in your business and figuring out, okay, do we just need to get rid of that process or is this something that just needs to be cleaned up? So what are you taking away is this section. The next section was what are we adding in, right? What are we introducing? And so this is like what worked well that you want to continue doing. Continuation and addition was actually this section. So what worked well that you really want to continue doing, that you want to build upon, that you want to refine and make even better? What sort of initiatives could you add to reach your goals? So let's say that you want to get more leads in the business. Which channels are performing well to where you're getting leads from? And which channels are you not currently utilizing that you could introduce, whether that's a podcast or speaking or, an outreach process, any of that. And then thinking about what sort of investments do you need to make to achieve your goals, right? Like if you spend a lot of time thinking about things that you want to do, and if you spend a lot of time coming back to the same place, or you have a lot of ideas, or you recognize that change is needed, you probably need an advisor. Like we need to have a discussion about, okay, now that I'm hiring somebody to come into my business with me and hold me to these goals, I know that's going to create real change for me. So what sort of investments do you need to make to achieve your goals? Whether that's an advisor, whether that's, another team member, or sometimes both, right? So what are you adding and what are you continuing that worked really well? The next section that I went into was my marketing channels and any changes to those. So I listed all of the marketing channels that we currently use. And then, of course, reflecting back on what performed well, what didn't perform well, where we want to keep going and where we don't. And so just a full overview. So what marketing channels brought in the most leads? Are there any sort of channels we want to add? Are there any channels that we want to get rid of? And then what are the goals that you have for each channel? I think that sometimes we expect, especially in online marketing, we expect for every channel to be for conversions. And we forget that there's a big difference between marketing and sales. And we could be great marketers, but if we're not good at sales and or our product or our service isn't good, like part of the funnel is broken. So looking at your marketing in all of those channels was the next part that I went through. And then after that, I went through team support and changes. So I broke this down by team member, everything that they're doing, any changes I wanted to make to what they're doing based upon what we're adding, how that was going to get allocated, and then what was going to be taken away based upon like what we're not doing anymore. I highly recommend asking your team members individually for feedback. I sent out a questionnaire to all of my team members like 2 weeks before I did this and asked them to answer these questions that I sent so that I had feedback from them, because I love the different sets of eyes in the business. So I had this feedback going into this planning day. And so I took that feedback and really just laid out like, okay, this is their feedback. This is areas that we can improve. And so based upon that, what do we need to do? And what I created from this is I obviously shifted roles as needed, but then I also, with the additions, was like, okay, who can lead these initiatives? Because a lot of times we take things on and we're like, okay, we're starting this new thing, so it needs to be me. And that's not always the case. So we have some new initiatives that are happening that my team members are actually leading, which is incredible. And I'll still be a part of it. But it's like, if you can plan and build out the process, then you can hand it off to your team. If you need help doing this, we could talk about that. So team support, any changes there, team performance, like how are we doing? Is there conversations that need to be had that you're avoiding? Do we need more team support? What are the gaps in your support, right? And then, so again, are there opportunities for any team members to take ownership of specific projects or leadership roles? So these were all questions that I asked for team. I love my team. Very, very good stuff that came from that. So the next place that I went was operational improvements. So what sort of bottlenecks are happening regularly in our workflows? Are there repetitive tasks that we could automate that we're just like not taking the time to set up? And do we need to update or implement any new processes to align with our goals? So it was great because I was able to take like new things that we're adding, build out processes for those, assign those out in project management, and have the team take over. And so these operational improvements, these are like the little things that get ignored, but they like operations, systems, that kind of stuff is so important. And even if it's saving you 5 minutes a day, 5 minutes a day over the course of a year is a really long time. So operational improvements, system changes, obviously this is where like platform changes come in, moving away from Kajabi for us and onto something new. And then the next place that I went to was lead acquisition. So as business owners, we all need leads. Where are we getting the leads from? And what are our processes for each of these channels, right? So what I did here is I listed out every single place that we're getting leads from. And then I went to each place, each channel, and I built out processes or added to processes or refined processes for each area so that they were optimized, or introduce processes for places that are additions for us, right? And so I went through referrals, visibility, our content, ads, in-person events, creating lead magnets, our wait lists, and consultation calls. So those are like our main lead acquisition channels. And it's really eye-opening because I think in this section, there's a lot of people and a lot of the clients that I work with are so focused on like one channel, or, they're primarily referral based, or they're relying too much on social media. And so it's very eye-opening based upon your goals to see, okay, if we know that we need to bring in, double the leads in order to hit this goal in the business, like we need to be more visible, or we need to be, building more relationships, or both. And so what channel are we going to utilize for that? So what channels worked best for you? And are there any underutilized channels that you want to develop or focus on? And making sure that you have a clear plan for each section. What does it look like to repetitively use that channel? And then the last section but one of the most important is the calendar, right? So I've mentioned capacity a few times. We get really excited about new projects, new opportunities, new everything in the new year, right? And then we're like, oh, wait, but I still have to do all the old stuff too. So that's where taking it to your calendar, developing like, what do you want your workload and your capacity to feel like? What are your non-negotiable personal commitments? I highly recommend as a mom, opening your kids' school calendar, marking dates off that, for family vacations, for like the half days that our kids have, all that kind of stuff ahead of time. It's so helpful, right? To where it's like, if you can block off vacation time for your family, vacation time with your partner, and block off, if you're going to attend any retreats, like block off all the stuff for yourself first. And you go into the year and you won't be resentful because everything is planned around the things for you. So what are those non-negotiable personal commitments? Marking those off on your calendar. What are your professional commitments, right? Like, where are you launching certain things? Do you have certain events that you're hosting or attending? And then how can you balance your work and your personal priorities more effectively this year? Where did you fall short? And how many hours do you really want to be working and working back into that? That's something that I love doing with clients, is developing their CEO schedule, because we often find that I can cut like 10 plus hours a week just by going through and organizing your schedule. So that's it, guys. That was my VIP planning day. I know it was a lot of information, a lot of questions for you in a short episode, but I really hope that this helps you to better plan and prepare. And once again, if you need help in planning this, don't hesitate to reach out. I am scheduling, I think, only 4 VIP days for new clients this year. So there's not going to be a ton of availability there. So don't hesitate to reach out if you want me to come and do this with you and take it to a deeper level. Or if you're interested in working together, you can absolutely book a consultation call. And if you want to see kind of like what it's like for me to be in your back pocket, you can definitely join my free Telegram channel. This is where I hop in with advice, tips, mom stuff, business stuff, and it's free, and you just get to listen in and apply to your life. So thank you guys for listening, and we will talk next week.